6 a.m. The bedroom door swung open like it had been kicked in. The blanket was ripped off my body, and a voice sharp as a knife slashed through the silence. Get up. You're freeloading in this house and still sleeping in? Get up and make breakfast for my son. I jolted upright, heart pounding. Standing before me was Linda, my mother-in-law, her face flushed red, eyes blazing like she wanted to burn me alive on the spot. I had just wrapped up a contract worth hundreds of thousands of dollars for a company in Seattle at 3 a.m. But to her, I was nothing but a leech playing on the computer. From the living room, Walter, my father-in-law, growled after slamming a plate onto the table. A man can't live on salad. Can you even cook a proper meal? The air thickened like it was trying to strangle me. Ashlyn, thought I had built a home. But now this place felt like a battlefield. I sat on the bed, my hands trembling, not from fear but from restraint. And in my mind, one question echoed loud and clear. How much longer before I explode? I don't remember exactly when they began to treat this apartment as their own. Maybe it was on the 10th day, when Linda started storing her old sweaters in the guest bedroom closet and called it my room. Or maybe it was on the 15th night, when Walter boldly rewired the entire sound system in the living room, saying, "The speakers are set up wrong, the sound isn't balanced." But one thing I remember clearly. In the 3rd week, I discovered Linda had replaced every spice in the kitchen. I opened the cabinet to grab turmeric, the key ingredient I used when preparing herb-roasted chicken for demanding clients, only to find the jar empty. On the shelf sat rows of store-bought sauces, so many that I thought I had stepped into a southern barbecue restaurant's pantry. No warning. No permission. I stood there, hands still on the cabinet door as her voice cut in from behind. I can't cook with your strange dried seeds and roots. A kitchen needs proper spices. I turned, keeping my voice even. This is my kitchen, Linda. I use these for work every day. She lifted her chin, smirking. You think playing games on a computer and shipping food out counts as work? I swallowed the words rising in my throat. Answering her would light a fuse I couldn't put out. But the cracks inside me were spreading fast. Ethan didn't help. He kept repeating one line, "They're only staying for a while. Mom's stressed about family issues. Can't you bear with it a bit longer?" I looked at him, drained. It's been nearly 6 weeks. I don't feel like this is my home anymore. Ethan sighed, turned back to his phone as if the conversation had ended. Linda didn't invade my space. He controlled my rhythm of life. At 8 a.m. she yanked open curtains and flipped on every light. At 10 she grilled me about bills, even though I managed the joint account. At noon she barged into my office to dust, while I was in a live meeting with clients in California. Each time she slammed the door so hard the webcam shook. I wanted to disappear from the screen. I tried convincing myself this was a test, that I had to stay quiet a little longer. But when I found the bank statement, I knew I couldn't look away. That night, Ethan left his wallet on the kitchen counter. While cleaning up, I noticed a pale pink receipt poking out, bold letters, Maison des Fleurs, Beverly Hills. I opened the banking app immediately. On the secondary credit account I shared with Ethan, a string of new transactions from the past 2 weeks appeared. A pair of Italian silk shoes worth over $900. A limited edition Hermes scarf, nearly $600. Gold-toned home decor from a boutique in Scottsdale. I hadn't bought any of it. And Ethan never cared about scarves. Linda. I remembered her offhand comment while watching TV. That scarf would look perfect with my evening gown. These styles sell out fast. I thought she was joking. Reaching for my own wallet, I checked the confirmation emails from the bank. Every order had been charged to the secondary card, the one I'd opened for Ethan's business trips, now clearly in someone else's hands. No warnings. No one asked if I agreed to thousands of dollars being spent on Linda's treats. I tapped the counter to steady myself, then sat down to print every statement. I needed proof. That evening, during dinner, I laid the stack of papers on the table, right next to Linda's plate of fried chicken. You know this secondary card is joint property, right? I asked quietly. Linda glanced at it, no trace of guilt. If you have a problem, cancel the card. I didn't beg anyone. Ethan left it in his wallet, so I used it. Since when do spouses keep score? Ethan looked from me to his mother, saying nothing. I turned to him. I want you to call the bank tomorrow. Cancel the secondary card. And you'll repay every charge from your personal income. Ethan frowned. Ashlyn, you're blowing this out of proportion. There are a few gifts Mom picked out, nothing. I don't need your judgment of nothing. I need boundaries. And respect. Linda scoffed. So now you're the keeper of the safe? Trying to control your husband too? Don't forget, without Ethan, you wouldn't even have this apartment. That was the final blow of the day. And the first nail in the line I knew I had to draw. I rose and drew the statements, my eyes sweeping over the three people at the table. My husband, who once promised to build a fair life with me, my mother-in-law treating this apartment as her trophy, and myself being slowly erased from a home I co-owned. None of them knew I already had an appointment with a lawyer. The very next day, I had prepared carefully for that dinner. Not to impress anyone, but to prove I still controlled at least one thing in this home slipping away from me. The main dish was pan-seared salmon with lemon sauce and roasted asparagus in olive oil. I chose it not only because Ethan once said he loved it, but also because clients in California had written me thank you emails every time I shipped it to them. But as I set the plates down, Linda raised her eyebrows from the far end of the table, as if I'd laid a dead rat on a white cloth. No red meat, she asked, her voice loud enough for every guest to hear. Walter grunted, reaching for the wine bottle. Ethan sat beside him, glanced at me, then lowered his eyes to his plate, slicing food as if nothing had happened. That evening was Ethan's early birthday dinner. I hadn't planned a big celebration. But Linda insisted on inviting 3 relatives, her cousin Wendy, her uncle Bob, and her niece, a college transfer from Texas, and demanded I step into my role as a wife. I tried. I cooked, I served, I set candles, and even prepared a chocolate mousse cake Linda once dismissed as passable. But from the moment guests arrived, I felt the imbalance in the air. Linda didn't miss a single chance to assert control. Let me redo this salad. Ashlyn never adds enough salt. These candles look cheap, Wendy. Next time I'll bring better ones for her. I heard every word, every syllable like needles stitching through skin. By the time everyone sat at the table, glasses filled with wine, laughter drifting across the room, Linda raised her glass. Ethan, I'm so proud of you. Thanks to the values your father and I taught you since childhood, you've grown into the successful man you are today. She turned to the guests. He's a team lead now. Everyone at the office respects him. Not like those people working from home, glued to their laptops, thinking they're important. Laughter rippled, thin enough to turn eyes toward me. Linda pressed on. My son is strong because we built his foundation. Not because of silly online consulting jobs. I set my fork down, my pulse leveled, one beat to decide, as if my body was giving me 1 second to decide. Stay silent or speak. I chose the latter. You're right. Ethan has great potential. But if you ask who paid his first year of tuition when he lost his scholarship, that was me. If you ask who co-signed for this apartment after his first loan was denied for lack of credit history, that was also me. And today, before everyone arrived, I signed a 3-year contract with a media corporation in Seattle. I'll be managing the digital campaign for the entire West Coast. Wendy's eyes widened. Bob set down his glass. Linda pressed her lips tight. That silly job, I continued calmly, is the reason this family still has electricity, water, and dinner tonight. Linda leaned back, lips trembling with anger. You think making money makes you superior? You think earning a few dollars gives you the right to look down on others? I don't look down on anyone. I'm exhausted from being looked down on for nearly 2 months, in the very apartment I helped pay for. Linda slammed her hand on the table, her wine glass rattling. This is Ethan's house. Did you forget? The name Coleman on the contract is his. Yes. And the signature beside it is mine. I turned to Ethan, waiting for him to say something. Anything. He avoided my eyes. Dabbed his mouth with a napkin. Silent. His silence landed louder than any defense he could have offered. Linda didn't stop. I said it from the start. Since stepping into this house, you've always acted superior. A wife who won't serve, who won't respect her mother-in-law, who won't stay in her place. My role is not to stay silent while being insulted, I said, eyes locked on Ethan, nor to disappear among people who belittle me. Walter snapped. Enough. This is Ethan's birthday. Isn't this shameful enough? I feel ashamed for inviting everyone here, only to realize I'm sitting with people who disrespect the very person hosting this dinner. I rose. I apologized to those who came to share a meal, not to hear an argument. But if I don't speak tonight, I may never hear my own voice again. Ethan stood. Ashlyn, sit down. You're making this bigger than it is. No. I'm starting to set boundaries. I walked away from the table, leaving behind whispers, averted eyes, and a husband still standing there, silent as if silence was the easiest act he could manage in this marriage. After that dinner, I said nothing more. I cleaned in silence. Every plate, every half-finished glass of wine, every slice of mousse cake abandoned without a word of thanks. Linda and Walter had gone upstairs. Ethan sat watching TV as though the fight had never happened. I stood alone in the kitchen, rubber gloves trembling faintly on my hands. Not from fatigue. From rage. From the isolation of being cut off inside a space I had helped build. I peeled off the gloves, set them on the sink, and walked into the living room. Ethan, I want to be clear about this. He looked up, frowning as though I had shattered some precious moment. Now, Ashlyn? We had a very awkward evening. Can't you let things cool off? No. I've endured enough. If they don't leave this house within a week, I will. He stared like I was joking. But I didn't smile. We're overreacting. He leaned back, arms crossed. My mom is a bit much, sure, but Dad means no harm. You're taking this too personally. Because it is personal, Ethan. It's about being insulted every day in the very home we co-own. Not a rented room. Our home. And yet I've never been treated like an owner. He sighed. Fine. I'll talk to Mom. I nodded, but inside I didn't believe him. And I was right. 3 days later, I came home earlier than planned after a cancelled meeting. Before stepping inside, I paused in the hallway to finish a call with Jenna, my lawyer friend. Ending the call, I caught voices echoing from inside. Ethan's voice. You know, Mom, she's difficult. But Ashlyn always makes things complicated. She doesn't know how to bend. Doesn't know how to let things go to keep peace. Linda's voice, lower but sharp. She's not right for you, Ethan. I told you from the start. Smart women like her always sit on top of men. And besides, no one calls that online stuff a real career. My heart dropped into an icy pit. I turned the doorknob slowly, stepped inside, masking my face with calm. Ethan startled slightly, then slipped back into his usual expression. Linda lounged in her chair, arms crossed, eyes smug. Back early? Ethan asked, voice hoarse. Meeting got cancelled. I caught part of your conversation with your mom. He fumbled. Ashlyn, that's not what I meant. You meant I don't know how to bend. You meant I make things complicated. You meant the person who needs correcting here is me? Linda cut in, smirking. She imagines things. Ethan was explaining. If you didn't make life hard, no one would be upset. I turned to her, my voice dangerously calm. You called me the problem, living in the apartment I pay half for every month. Linda crossed her arms. This house is in my son's name. Don't forget that. And his wife's legal signature is on the mortgage. If you want a legal battle, I'm ready. But here's what I'll say clearly. If you two don't move out within 7 days, I'll pack my bags. And I'm not bluffing. Ethan jumped up, snapping. You want to destroy everything over a few words? Not a slip of the tongue. A pattern of contempt. You never challenged, control and contempt, while you never once defended me. Linda laughed coldly. You think walking out will scare us? You'll lose this apartment, your husband, and whatever place you're clinging to. Try it. We'll take this home from you. You have no claim here. I didn't answer her. I looked at Ethan, waiting to see in that tight corner what he would choose to say. Once again, silence. I woke Monday morning with a dull headache pressing from the base of my skull to my forehead. The apartment was eerily quiet. Linda and Walter were likely out for their morning walk, a ritual since moving in. I poured myself a glass of water, sat at the dining table, and opened my laptop to prepare for a meeting with partners in Portland. Just then my phone buzzed. An anonymous message. No name. No photo. Only one line. Walk away or we'll ruin you. I sat frozen, fingers gripping the phone as if it had sent a cold shock through my body. No greeting. No context. The message was crafted by someone who knew exactly how far the law could stretch, and how to frighten without leaving a trace. I copied the screen and saved it in a folder already named Backup, Legal. I didn't need to ask who sent it. I knew. Linda. Not because the words sounded like hers. She would never write it down, she preferred speaking, shouting in someone's face. But there was something in the way those lines carried so much certainty, that, "I will do it and you can't stop me" tone. It bore her shadow. And Ethan wasn't sharp enough to come up with it. Walter even less. I opened my banking app, checked every transaction. Everything was intact. Email, social media, work data. I went through each as a reflex, searching for any sign of tampering. Nothing clear. Yet the feeling lingered. They were preparing something. And this was the first warning. That afternoon I met Jenna at our usual cafe in downtown Denver. She was my college friend, now a lawyer specializing in real estate and family law. The only person I still trusted in this city. Jenna spotted me from afar, waved, and pulled a chair out. I slid my phone across to show her the screenshot. Anonymous message. "This morning," I said briefly. Jenna frowned. "Someone's starting to play dirty. Do you think it's Linda?" "I know it's her." "You're not wrong. And I think you should know this. Yesterday I bumped into an old colleague who once defended a case back in 2019. I mentioned Linda Coleman's name. He remembered instantly. I looked at Jenna, my chest tightening. She once sued a woman who rented her condo in Lakewood. It never hit the news because it was settled quietly, but lawyers in the field knew. She kept filing violation notices, accused the tenant of property damage and late payments, then forced her to sign a withdrawal agreement with no compensation. And then, the tenant collapsed financially afterward. Linda bought the condo through an LLC under her own name. Rumor was she deliberately tanked the tenant's credibility to push the price down. I leaned back, chest burning. "You mean, she has a history?" "Not history, Ashlyn. A playbook. And now she doesn't need to sue a tenant. She's inside the apartment you co-own. The only thing she doesn't have is your signature alone. But if you walk away without handling paperwork, she could spin it into you abandoning the property." I clenched my hands. Ethan can't be stupid enough to go along with this. Jenna's brows furrowed. "Do you think he's choosing her side? Or is he simply too weak to oppose his mother?" I couldn't answer. I didn't want to think about it. But deep down I knew, Ethan never opposed anything Linda did. He had been molded by her since childhood. And now his silence meant he too wanted to keep the apartment, the reputation, the control. Jenna's voice dropped. "You need to start collecting everything. Not bank statements, emails, texts, photos, proof of your financial contributions, proof you live there, and the ongoing psychological abuse. Even security camera footage if available." I nodded, eyes steady now. "I already started. Last week." That night back home I said nothing to Ethan. I plugged in my laptop, opened the backup, legal folder, and added a new entry, Linda's old tactic, Lakewood case. I also began recording every argument. Not because I wanted to sue, but because I refused to be the next woman they crushed into silence. I didn't know if she would strike at my reputation, my career, or the law. But she wasn't the only one who knew how to play it. As I wrapped up a Zoom meeting with partners in Oregon and was gathering my notes before heading to the kitchen for coffee, Ethan walked into my office. He tapped the doorframe lightly, holding a thin file in a blue folder. "Got a minute? I need you to sign this real quick." "What is it?" "Just some updated financial forms. The bank's accountant said we need to standardize ownership details and align a few terms with our current income level." I took the folder. Dense lines of print covered the pages, topped with the title, Amendment to Property and Financial Agreement, Revision B. I skimmed. Mentions of Temporary Asset Management Authority, Optimized Ownership per Marital Agreement, and then the phrase that made me freeze, Right of Survivorship and Default Transfer of Title. Who prepared this? A friend of mine, a financial advisor. I sent him both our income info, he drafted it. For convenience, in case we want loans or investment transfers later. I flipped a few more pages. Signature lines, one for me, one for him, and a note notarized on the final page. "Hey, let me read this carefully. We'll sign tonight." "Sure, but try this week, okay?" "They're pushing." I nodded, holding the papers like a live bomb. That evening, while Ethan went to a steakhouse downtown with Walter, Linda claimed a headache and stayed in her room. I drove straight to Jenna's office. She looked at me with tension, as if already sensing trouble. "Brought the hard copy?" Jenna asked. I pulled the file from my bag. She spread the pages across the desk. Read slowly. 5 minutes passed in silence. Then she leaned forward, pointing at a section. Here. This is the trap. I followed her finger. See under section 4.2? The term default beneficiary? It means if any dispute or marital change arises in the future, your ownership automatically transfers to the sole beneficiary, Ethan. You mean, if I sign, he could have my name removed from the property? Exactly. And with this wording, you couldn't fight back unless you proved coercion or fraud, which is nearly impossible, since it's framed as a voluntary agreement. And this was his friend's work? Jenna flipped the page. No. Look at the reference code. This is a standardized form used in Colorado property transfers. No amateur could draft it. He got someone experienced. I pretended to agree. But before that, can I copy the whole thing? Of course. I'll scan it, keep one copy myself, encrypt one for you, and print another. From now on, don't sign anything from Ethan without me reviewing it first. That night, when Ethan returned, I sat at the dining table under the soft kitchen light. Linda still hadn't left her room. The house went still enough that the lock's click sounded like a knock. Ethan walked in, set his keys down. Did you finish reading? Yes. A few things I want clarified. Tomorrow I'd like to go over it with you, and maybe with a friend's input too. Just to make sure it's all transparent. He raised an eyebrow, hiding a flicker of unease. Is that necessary? This is between us. The more personal it is, the clearer it should be. So no one has doubts later. Don't you agree? Ethan stared for a moment, then nodded slightly. I placed the file back on the shelf, where I knew he would notice it. But the copies, both digital and physical, were stored in far safer places. As I switched off the dining light, I caught Linda's eyes from the top of the stairs. She said nothing, but I knew she had heard. I can't pin down when it started. Maybe it was the hand towel in the bathroom. Linda left it soaked, twisted carelessly, and that day I slipped out a reminder. Could you hang the towel up, please? The bathroom gets moldy easily. But in Linda's world, that was an insult. She exhaled sharply as if offended, and turned to me with undisguised contempt in her eyes. This house has been falling apart ever since you started having a voice. I smiled, replying, maybe it's because the house has never been used to another grown woman besides you. I turned away, not waiting for her reaction. But a few hours later, when Ethan walked into the living room, I knew she had told him. And not in a neutral way. Ethan stood in the middle of the room, eyes fixed on me as though looking at a child who had misbehaved. You can't talk to Mom like that, Ashlyn. I set my laptop aside. What did I say wrong? I asked her to help keep the bathroom dry. That's a basic request when living together. He grimaced. But you always turn everything into an issue. Whether it's a towel, the kitchen, the TV volume. Not everyone lives the way you do. Ethan, this isn't about the towel. It's about you constantly excusing your parents' behavior instead of listening to your wife's feelings. He crossed his arms, exhaling through his nose. They raced me. You'll never replace them. I looked at him, weariness pouring into my eyes. I'm not trying to replace them, Ethan. I want a marriage where I'm not treated like the help. He gave a short laugh, empty of humor. You're overreacting. My mom's a little strict. But she cares about me, about us. You have to understand that. I do understand. But I don't accept it. And if this doesn't change, I'll file for divorce. My words dropped the room into silence. I could hear the clock ticking, the heater humming, and Linda's footsteps slowly descending the stairs. She had heard everything. Ethan didn't respond immediately. His eyes shifted, then returned to me as if weighing the seriousness of what I had said. You're threatening me? Oh, Ethan. For the first time, I'm not threatening, not pleading, not waiting. This is a boundary. And I'm setting it clearly. Linda came to stand behind him. Her voice was sharp as glass. If you want to leave, then do it now. Don't drag us into your theatrics. Ethan doesn't need a wife who keeps drawing legal boundaries. My eyes stayed on the man who once promised to build a decent life with me. Ethan, how long will you stay silent? You're making everything messy, Ashlyn. I'm tired of being stuck in the middle. You're not in the middle. You chose their side a long time ago. I finally see it for what it is. Linda scoffed. Finally, some sense. I turned to her. I don't need your approval. And I don't need to spend another day in a home where my words are treated as annoying as drama. as something to push aside to keep peace. Ethan spoke, his voice for the first time tinged with panic. "You're serious about divorce?" "I've never been more serious about anything in my life." I knew I had snapped the last thread holding me to this marriage. And if it broke, I had no intention of tying it back together. I left the apartment on a rainy Denver morning. One large suitcase, 2 cardboard boxes, and my laptop were all I carried. No fights, no dramatic farewell. A note left for Ethan on the kitchen table. "I won't spend one more day in that home. When you're ready to talk about divorce, I'll be waiting." My new studio was on the 3rd floor of an old building near Capitol Hill. Barely 300 square feet, but with a big window overlooking a maple-lined street. White walls, creaky wooden floors, but quiet enough that I could hear the water boiling in the kettle. That first night, I lay on a twin mattress, no one knocking at the door, no complaints from the kitchen, and after months, breath finally came easy. I knew Linda wouldn't stay quiet. Just 3 days later, a colleague sent me a screenshot from Facebook. Linda had written a long post, vague but obvious to anyone. "It's sad when some women think they're important because they sit in front of a computer all day while abandoning their family. Abandoning their husband, their responsibilities, living selfishly. My son doesn't deserve this." Beneath it, dozens of comments. Mostly from her old friends, people who only knew her side. "Poor Ethan. Women these days only care about themselves. Thank goodness he has his parents." I read every line, not skipping a single one. My chest tightened, but instead of reacting, I pulled out my phone and captured every comment, every word. All saved in the folder I had already named. Evidence, defamation. That evening I called Jenna. "They've started." Linda posted publicly, making up stories that I abandoned my husband, that I'm a freeloader, irresponsible. Jenna sighed through the phone. "I'm not surprised. But you did the right thing. Don't respond. Save it all. This could support a defamation case or at least serve as evidence of psychological abuse." I feel hurt. They write as if my entire life is a burden. Ashlyn, listen. Every line they post is another brick in the wall protecting you in court. Don't let your emotions push you into typing a single rebuttal. Sometimes silence is the sharpest strike. I gripped the phone, whispering, "I won't let them turn me into a victim again." In the days that followed, I rearranged my life as if building a temporary fortress. I bought a small safe to store every bank statement, work contract, and scanned copy of those financial agreements Ethan once handed me. I created a secondary email account for communication with my lawyer. I set up 2-step passwords on every device. Work became the only place I felt my worth remained intact. Clients in Seattle, Portland, Austin kept sending new contracts. They knew nothing of my private life, and I intended to keep it that way. During working hours, I was Ashlyn, the professional woman consulting on digital strategy for corporations. Only when the screen went dark did I become Ashlyn again, the wife despised by her in-laws, the woman preparing for a silent legal war. One night, while reviewing documents, my phone lit up with a new message. This time not anonymous. From Ethan. "Do you really plan to leave me?" Mom posted a few lines, she was upset. "Don't blow things out of proportion." My fingers moved slowly, typing each word. That wasn't a few lines. It's a smear campaign. Your silence makes you complicit. I hit send. No reply. The next morning, Jenna called. I found out more. Linda isn't posting. She's whispering to some of Ethan's old contacts, saying you secretly took money from the joint account and sent it to your family in Vermont. I laughed, this time without the sharp pain in my chest. My family in Vermont? I haven't had close relatives there in over a decade, except for an estranged aunt. I know. But to outsiders, that rumor plants doubt. And if they build the narrative of Ashlyn the freeloader, Ashlyn the embezzler, you'll lose leverage. Then we need stronger evidence. Exactly. And I think it's time you install cameras in your studio. Not because they have keys, but because you need proof of your state of mind. That you live independently, work steadily, and cause no trouble. Meanwhile, every attack comes from them. Fine. I'll do it this week. One weekend afternoon, I ran into Linda at the supermarket. She was with Walter, pushing a cart piled with red meat and packaged cookies. I started to turn away, but she had already spotted me. Linda smiled. A smile that froze me inside. "Oh, Ashlyn. How's life in that little rented box?" Walter cleared his throat, chuckling. "Heard you left your husband." Be careful, a single woman gets chewed up out there. I pulled out my phone, snapped a photo, slipped it back into my pocket. Linda stiffened. What are you doing? Just preserving the moment, I said calmly. Proof that you still follow me even after I left. I pushed my cart forward without looking back. But inside, I knew they'd only grow more furious at the thought of being recorded. That night, sitting in my studio organizing files on my laptop, I realized something had shifted inside me, that I stopped collecting proof and started making plays. I was beginning to plan offense. Linda wanted to turn me into the one who ran away, the freeloader in the eyes of the world. But I knew with every text, every post, every photo, and every bank statement, I would turn those lies into evidence against her. On the morning of the first hearing, the Denver sky was heavy gray. I walked through the thick glass doors of the county courthouse with a folder clutched in my hands, nerves buzzing but strangely calm. I wore a navy blazer, hair tied neatly, makeup light, not to show off but to remind myself, I wasn't here as an abandoned wife. I was here as a woman who knew how to defend herself. Ethan was already seated at the plaintiff's table, crisp white shirt, tie straightened. Beside him sat his lawyer, a tall man in his 40s with confident, slightly arrogant eyes. I recognized the type instantly. Men who believed women would crumble under pressure, falter beneath pointed questions. In the first row behind him, Linda sat upright, face proud, eyes glinting with smug satisfaction. Walter beside her, silent, but the corner of his mouth curved upward. They weren't there for fairness. They were there to see me erased from the game. I took my seat at the defendant's table, Jenna by my side. She squeezed my hand, whispered, "You already have everything you need. Don't let their eyes shake you." I nodded, drew a deep breath. The judge entered, everyone rose, then sat. The case was called, Ethan Coleman suing his wife, Ashlyn Coleman, petitioning for sole ownership of apartment number. Ethan's lawyer rose first, voice strong, clear, dripping confidence. "Your Honor, my client Ethan bore most of the cost of this apartment with substantial help from his parents. The Coleman family contributed significantly from the down payment to later mortgage installments. Therefore, we ask the court to declare the apartment his separate property." Linda nodded, smiling smugly. I glanced at Jenna. She signaled, "Stay calm. Let them lay down their cards." The lawyer went on, but all he had were assertions. No documents, no records. Only, his parents contributed, the family supported. When he sat down, the judge turned to me. "Does the defense have a response?" Jenna stood, her voice steady but firm. "Your Honor, the plaintiff has made serious claims without presenting evidence. We request permission to submit documented financial proof." She handed over the folder. I caught Linda leaning forward, eyes narrowing. Ethan whispered hurriedly to his lawyer. The judge flipped page by page. Bank statements clearly showing mortgage payments drawn directly from the joint account under my name and Ethan's. The down payment, a large sum, wired from my personal account 2 weeks before the purchase was finalized. Jenna continued. Additionally, we submit copies of texts and emails showing my client was repeatedly threatened and insulted by her husband's family. On the large courtroom screen, the words appeared, "Walk away or we'll ruin you," along with multiple degrading messages Linda had sent through Messenger. Murmurs rippled through the spectators. Linda's face flushed red. She whispered sharply to Walter, but he kept his head down, avoiding everyone's gaze. The judge lingered over the audio recordings. Jenna played the short clip. Linda's shrill voice. "You think making money makes you important? This apartment belongs to Ethan. You have no rights here." Ethan's lawyer shot to his feet. "Your Honor, those were words spoken in anger, not reflective of the financial situation. My client's parents. Do you have any records proving direct contributions from Ethan's parents?" The judge cut in. "We don't have them today, but we could provide. The court does not rely on speculation." The judge's voice was cold. "The record shows the apartment was purchased through the joint account, with the down payment from Mrs. Ashlyn's personal funds. No evidence proves contributions from the plaintiff's parents. Therefore, the court recognizes the property as marital, jointly owned." Linda leapt up. "Impossible. Sit down. This is a courtroom, not a place for you to argue." My heart pounded, but not from fear. For the first time in months, I heard justice speak for me. Ethan's head dropped. His lawyer shuffled empty pages. Linda's glare burned into me. But her fury had lost its weight. Jenna squeezed my hand, whispered, "You won a critical round." After the ruling that the apartment was marital property, I thought Ethan would at least try to save face by paying his share of the mortgage on time. But only a month later, the first bank notice arrived: late payment. I opened the envelope. Bold letters showed the overdue balance. My portion was fully paid, clear on the statement. His share absent. I called him that evening. "Ethan, did you forget the mortgage this month?" I asked as calmly as I could. His voice on the line was curt, dismissive. "I don't have the money. Mom's sick, Dad needs me to help. I thought you could cover for a few months. I've paid my share. This isn't about helping. It's a legal obligation. Ashlyn, you've got that new Seattle contract. You can easily afford it. Why nitpick dollars with your ex?" He spoke as if our marriage was erased, leaving only financial chains tying me to him. "Ethan, if you don't pay, both our credit scores will tank. Do you understand?" He scoffed. "Then you cover it. You're always the smart one, always prepared." "Prove it." The line went dead with a long beep. The next 2 months things only got worse. I paid my half without fail, yet the bank kept sending warnings. Letters grew thicker, words harsher. One morning, while preparing slides for a virtual meeting, my phone rang. A bank officer, polite but edged with caution. "Mrs. Coleman, we need to confirm your payment ability. If this continues, the account may be moved toward foreclosure. I've paid my share in full. The problem is the co-owner. But I can bring the loan current, on one condition: we restructure ownership." "Meaning?" "I want the mortgage contract under my name only. I'll pay the arrears today and assume sole responsibility moving forward." That afternoon, I walked into the bank's downtown branch with a thick leather file. Inside, every statement, receipt, transfer, proof that I always paid and Ethan never did. The loan manager, gray hair slicked back, thick glasses perched on his nose, studied the pages, nodding occasionally. "You've built a strong case," he said evenly. "The bank doesn't want foreclosure. It's costly, slow, bad for both sides. I can cut a check today. But I want the restructured contract this week. No Ethan on it." He folded his hands, thinking, "We'll need his signature to remove him." I slid another stack across the desk, printouts of Ethan's texts, admitting he wasn't paying and leaving it all to me. "If needed, the court will treat this as abandonment of responsibility. But I don't think you wanted to reach that point." "Agreed. We'll proceed." A week later, I signed the new contract. Ethan never showed. The bank had enough. My documents, plus the arrears I covered the day of negotiation. When it was done, the manager handed me the new ownership certificate. My name stood alone. Clear. Final. The last chain binding me to a dead marriage had been cut. The news reached Ethan quickly. That afternoon he called, voice raging, choking. "What the hell did you do? Why is my name gone?" I kept my voice calm. "I did what you wouldn't. Paid on time. The bank chose the clean solution. You lost your rights because you abandoned your duties. Ashlyn, you betrayed me. This was your scheme from the start." "What scheme?" "Every page has a signature and the bank seal. You want to sue? Go ahead. But remember, I've saved every message you ever sent." The line went silent for a moment, then Ethan screamed, "You'll pay for this." Linda didn't stay quiet for long. A few days later, she showed up outside the building where I rented my studio, pounding on the door. I opened the window, looked down from the 3rd floor. "What do you want?" I called out. Linda tilted her head back, face flushed red. "You thief. That apartment belongs to my family. You think you've won?" I raised the new certificate high, letting her see the bank seal and my name in bold. "This isn't theft, Linda. This is the law." She screamed curses, but the building security arrived, ordering her to leave. I stepped back, closed the window. Inside, fear had already slipped away. The day Ethan filed another lawsuit, I wasn't surprised. To him, losing the apartment wasn't losing a home. It was losing the symbol of control his family once used to crush me. The complaint was laughable. Ashlyn exploited loopholes to unlawfully seize Coleman family property. He wrote it as if I'd broken into the bank and swapped papers. At the brief hearing, Jenna stood, presenting each piece of evidence. Bank statements, the restructured mortgage with the manager's signature, receipts showing I'd paid all arrears. The judge and clerk couldn't hide their weariness listening to Ethan's flimsy arguments. It took less than 10 minutes for the judge to rule. The lawsuit was dismissed as baseless. Ethan slumped into his seat, face burning red. Behind him, Linda jumped up, shouting, "The whole system is rigged. This isn't fair. That home belongs to my son." The gavel struck down. The judge warned, "If you don't keep order, I'll have you removed by security." After court, the storm didn't settle. Linda and Walter turned their rage into noisy scenes outside my apartment building. One afternoon, as I returned from work, I found them standing in the lobby, waving meaningless papers, shouting, "Listen, everyone. She stole our family home." Passers-by slowed, some shaking their heads, others stepping away. Security stepped forward, firm-voiced, "You need to leave immediately. Otherwise, we'll call the police." Linda shouted louder, her voice hoarse, "We won't leave. This is my son's house." Walter growled too, but in his eyes I saw fatigue. The look of a man who knew the fight was lost but was dragged along anyway. Security didn't waste time. They called local officers. By the time 2 policemen arrived, Linda was still yelling but eventually forced to leave. I stood a few steps away, watching silently. Words had nothing to add, the scene said it all. A family who once thought they controlled me, now reduced to noisy shadows on the sidelines, holding no weight in my life. News spread quickly in their small community. Linda had always bragged about her son's luxury apartment, about the lucky wife who married into the Coleman family. But now people whispered another story, that she'd been thrown out of a lobby, that the court had tossed their lawsuit. Invitations stopped. Calls dried up. Old friends distanced themselves, not to side with me but simply because no one wanted to share in public shame. Ethan's fate was harsher. After losing in court, he had no apartment to cling to. His office salary couldn't cover attorney fees plus his parents' endless demands. I heard from an acquaintance that he'd moved back in with Linda and Walter, into a shabby rental on the outskirts of Aurora. The house, I was told, had peeling walls, warped floors, a living room barely big enough for a sagging sofa. From a city view balcony apartment, they'd fallen to a rundown month-to-month rental. One evening, while visiting a client nearby, I drove past. I stopped across the street, looking at the yard overgrown with weeds, the porch crumbling. Through a dimly lit window, I saw Linda and Walter bickering, Ethan walking past with his head down, silent. I didn't feel triumphant as I once imagined. The sight was more like a tragic painting they had painted for themselves. They'd had every chance to live peacefully, but chose control and humiliation. Now they were trapped inside their own collapse. That night, back at my apartment, I sat by the window overlooking Denver's lights. I remembered Linda barging into my bedroom at 7 a.m., screaming at me like I was a parasite. I remembered Ethan turning away whenever his mother insulted me. And now, all they had left was a shabby rental echoing with arguments instead of pride. I closed my eyes, breathed deeply. The long days of suffocation were truly over. I didn't need to say I'd won. Their downfall was proof enough. After months of tension, my life shifted into a new rhythm. I threw myself into work with fresh energy, as if every door once shut was now opening. Consulting contracts poured in. A major partnership in Seattle. Then a tech firm in Austin. Meetings, video calls, contract signings came so fast I had to buy another monitor to keep up. Strangely, I wasn't exhausted. Each success, each client's thank you felt like a breath of new life. From someone mocked as sitting at a computer all day wasting time, I had proven my work carried weight, sustaining and lifting me from the shadows. At a Denver conference, I met Adrian by chance. He was a project manager for a tech infrastructure company, invited as a speaker. We ended up at the same discussion table, and I remember his first words to me. "I've read some of your posts on LinkedIn. They're sharp." I laughed, a little surprised. Most people don't pay attention to posts like that. Adrian shook his head. Most people don't. But I do. Because they carry truths others avoid. The way he spoke, steady, genuine, felt different. I was used to defending myself, used to Ethan's dismissals. Adrian carried no judgment. Later, our meetings became natural. Coffee after work, a walk around Sloan Lake, quiet dinners in tucked-away low-hi restaurants. Adrian never pretended to know everything. He listened. When I talked about tense meetings, he leaned in, asking thoughtful questions. When I opened old wounds, he stayed silent, eyes steady on me. I once thought marriage meant sacrificing myself. Adrian looked at me, voice soft as wind. Oh, Ashlyn. Marriage means two people being fully themselves together. If one must disappear for the other to exist, that's not marriage. The following autumn, I asked Adrian to move into my apartment. The home that was once a battleground filled with insults and contempt. Now I wanted to make it a haven, with my own hands. He agreed. On moving day, we carried boxes, hung new curtains, placed small plants on the balcony. He laughed. I've never seen anyone so happy to scrub a kitchen cabinet. That's because you don't know, it used to be where I was mocked for not cooking like a real wife. Adrian paused, took my hand. Now it's where we'll cook whatever we want for ourselves, no one else's judgment. We set a small dining table in the living room corner, where Linda once yelled. I placed a vase of sunflowers on top. Every glance at them felt like sunlight remaking the room. One night, when all was quiet, I sat by the window, Denver's lights glowing across the glass. Adrian brewed mint tea in the kitchen. I thought of mornings I'd been woken by screaming, of threats, lawsuits, false accusations. Now they felt like another lifetime. Adrian sat beside me, handing me a cup. I exhaled, whispered, they tried to trap me in these walls. But now these walls are mine. Proof I never bowed. Adrian held my hand, eyes shining with unspoken empathy. In the reflection, the frail, cornered woman was gone. From the reflection that I saw a new Ashlyn, steady, strong, free. You see, some walls once suffocate us. But when we overcome them, they stand as proof of inner strength. For me, that apartment is no longer a prison, but a monument to resilience, to saying enough and standing tall. And what about you? In my place, would you stay silent to keep the peace, or would you draw the line to protect your worth? I'd love to hear your thoughts, because every story, every voice can light the way for someone still lost in theirs. Don't forget to follow this channel so you won't miss the next stories. Slices of family life filled with both wounds and the power to heal. I believe each story will touch your heart, the way this journey has transformed mine.